Welcome to Splunk Talk, a Splunk podcast that's all Splunk and no junk. I'm your host, Burch, here with co-host
Hal.
This
I
episode
practiced that, by the way.
is season 2, episode 25. And we'll soon be joined by today's guest, Jeff Champagne, who will talk with us all about field product management. Before we go any further, though, let's check in on how everyone's been doing. How have you been doing?
Well, that was a bit of a wind up. I feel a little bit naked, like you've got your gear on, and I'm not. I mean, I could put it on, and just I'll do one ear, right? That's it's okay. I'm doing well. Well. I am. I've still got a lot of energy going from. We had the sales kickoff at Splunk that never ended, and it was
what's a sales kickoff?
A sales kickoff. So the people that are at any company that sells product and has a field, you're large enough to have a field organization, you'll know what a sales kickoff is, and it's usually a yearly thing, and everybody's getting together to say, okay, here's what's coming, here's what's changing, here's be excited about what's new, new rules of the road, whatever. And it's all the field side of the company is getting together and getting on the same page.
So kind of like hey, everyone who is spending 90% of your time with customers, we want to take a moment and just like pull you away from the customers so you can hear about what are all the cool things that you need to know to then tell back to your customers.
Yeah.
Versus
internal
like
training.
Trickling. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll allow it.
Yeah.
I act like I have no idea what it is. I've been to this is I've been to like 7, 6. I don't know. Yeah.
But no, it was cool because there was, we're talking to 700-800 people sometimes in the tech track that I was involved in, and
I'm just such a big deal. 700-800 people.
Oh, it's like screw you, comma.
It sure beats the 7 or 8 people that are audience to this thing.
Ouch. Okay. It's kind of.
Tell your friends.
Anyway, how was that? I was trying to pull tears up. No, it was pretty cool because it's involves a lot of. There's some creative license. There's a lot of content production, and then public speaking. And you and I were kind of into public speaking, I've heard. So yeah, it was a cool.
I think we've spoken about that publicly. We've spoken about that publicly.
Yes. But no, it was just a nice. The good parts of it were very good. So
that's good.
It was cool.
It must have been different, right? Because it was the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Not in person.
In Vegas.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely different. Instead of a week in Vegas, it was an interminable number of weeks of Zoom calls. Yes.
You and I have been here long enough that we remember before it was a week in Vegas, and it was a week in San Francisco.
I believe, yeah, I do recall one or two of those at basically a hotel, in San Francisco, like the Intercontinental or something.
Like them, yeah.
In fact, I want to say it was
a Marriott.
When was Obama elected? What year would that have been?
2008.
Okay.
Re-elected. And then 4 years later.
So, okay, that makes sense. So 2012, he was in town. He was staying in the same hotel that Sales Kickoff was at. I do explicitly recall that. I don't know if it was the Intercontinental, but it was a hotel, and Obama was there, and we had to all get screened, or rather, we didn't know, but every single one of us in that hotel were screened, had security screening done by the Secret Service.
Oh,
yeah, that's where
I had no idea.
I forget who I learned this from, but it was they talked about the process, and yeah, it was interesting.
I guess that makes sense because if that was 2012, that was the same year that we IPO'd.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously, our IPO was just as monumental.
It was the big deal of the year, yeah.
As maybe the election.
Yes, I thought so. But what do you?
Obviously sarcasm.
Yes, that's okay.
Good. we have our guest joining us in a few minutes. I'll reveal my big news when he joins because I think
whatever.
it all feeds into
It's sort
each
of
other.
relevant.
Yeah,
Sort of relevant.
sort of relevant.
Sort of relevant.
Uh,
So, have you done anything interesting related to Splunk?
have I done anything interesting related to Splunk? So I was recently in the developer. I'm working on my developer certification right now. So I'm doing a crash course in all of our courses
Yep.
that I'm crashing.
Yep.
And um, it's so fun getting back to like the nuggets that you get in our education classes. Like
Mhm.
they expose some things like not just best practices, but they point out like, oh, there's there's an attribute that you can add to a drop down in a dashboard. Allow custom values, and then that's the XML tag, simple
Mhm.
XML tag, and then the value is true. And
Mhm.
when you do that, when you're on a drop down, you know how like in our recent releases, the drop down is not just a drop down, there's also a text box. So you can
Yeah.
start to
Mhm.
type and it'll like reduce the result set accordingly.
Mhm.
Allow custom values allows you to type and then use that term exactly as you typed it.
Okay.
So you can choose, it's almost like I start writing, I have all these like products and I start writing Hal.
Mhm.
And then Hal is not necessarily one of the results on there, but
Mhm.
I can select Hal and it'll be added and the dashboard will be generated, even though it wasn't
Oh,
one of the.
okay. So it's a combo box.
It's like it makes the drop down into
a text
a,
input field.
a text input field as well.
Neat.
And I found that out. And then I was like, well, golly, I was just talking with someone about this.
Mhm.
Why have I not heard about it? And
Mhm.
sometimes I
Yeah. I
look
mean,
things
I
up
didn't.
and it turns out like it's been in the docs for years and I didn't know. In
Yeah.
this case, I couldn't find it in the documentation.
Oh
So
my.
I think number one, that's a cool thing about taking our
Yeah.
classes is that there's always some secret nuggets
Mhm.
that you can learn. Number two, I made a takeaway to get it in the documentation.
Yeah.
But number three, it kind of reminded me of I don't know if we do this anymore, but back in the day when I first started playing with Splunk, I remember we used to release features in our on-prem
Still
product.
do.
We still
Oh,
release
okay. I'll
features.
let you finish. I'm sorry.
We used to release features, but not announce them. So it was almost like a live regression testing. And I don't know if this was the intent, but it might be like I'm trying to think of an example. Maybe like some aspects of like TSIDX, like maybe a new version of like
Oh,
TSIDX.
yeah, yeah. Like adding a new compression
Yeah,
algorithm,
but it's not
instead of,
documented and it's not the default and it's
Z
not
standard, you can
announced.
use BZ2 or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And it's sort of like before people exercise this, like maybe there's still a little work to be done,
Yeah.
or maybe we just want to see how the code
Mhm.
like works in a regression perspective.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
but it kind of reminded me of that of when it was like you'd find out in the
Wonder
community,
if
like,
somebody was like, okay, and next release, we're going to document this and then
well,
that person forgot.
no, it was more like you'd be in the community like forums and stuff, and people would be like, "Oh, you want that sweet compression? I'll, I'll hook you up, man. Just just change TSIDX index level compression
What?
to
I'm
2."
going to blow your mind.
And then they'd scurry away into the
Yeah.
internet ether.
Yeah. Wait a
But
second. That's
yeah, and
not in
then
the spec file.
you felt super cool because you were like, yo, I'm out of spec. And you'd open support cases, they'd see your config in the diag and be like, oh, you must be cool because you're
Yeah, actually,
undocumented features.
you know XKCD, the cartoon?
I do.
Okay. Do you know forget the name of the name of the panel? It might be called Shibboleth, but that was the punchline, and it was
I always love
lady
jokes that
person
start with the punchline.
calls in the help desk, and they're like, "Yeah, I rebooted it already. Can we skip all this BS?" Like, and I know what I'm talking about. Can I talk to an engineer? And then next panel, and there's this lady. She's a hacker. She's like leaning back in her desk, whatever, and she says, "Oh yeah, no problem. Just adjust the. And by the way, next time, if you use the secret code Shibboleth, you'll get straight to a level 3 engineer." And then he wakes up. It was a dream. So.
Well, speaking of getting straight to a level 3 engineer, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jeff Champagne to the room. Level 3 engineer.
That was not
working
bad.
on his black belt.
I don't know if this works. I hooked up this mic that I never use.
That's an excellent thing to do, going straight into a podcast that records live with one take. Appreciate that, dude.
Yeah.
It's like, fine. It's a little hot.
You should totally perform not the way you practice.
No, just set it down. You don't have to pick it up like it was.
Well, apparently it just disconnected, so you're on my normal headset now. I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
So are you saying that for people that can't see, the microphone that Jeff has looks like the Death Star? And
it's
from
what we
understand,
I was about to say it's a snowball. Everyone knows what a snowball is.
It looks like the Death Star, and it is no longer fully operational.
Well, it says it's on, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. I literally just went through.
Oh, now it says it's on. Does it sound any better?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. You
stop touching it.
I'm not touching anything.
All right.
If you keep touching it, you'll break it.
If it makes
you
feel better, Jeff, I literally did the same thing to Burch 20 minutes ago before we started recording. So
roll dice.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Jeff, welcome to Splunk Talk, the Splunk podcast that's all Splunk and no junk.
I sometimes wonder about the tagline because, I mean, sometimes it is junk.
it's mostly junk.
It's good to know the effort, the collective brain power of you two are going to good use.
Yeah. So, Jeff, something that we like to do when people first join is to have their orange story, also known as their origin story.
Okay.
And we'd love to get into that with you, but before that, just like a quick, you're Jeff Champagne, you're the director of field product management here at Splunk.
I thought he was senior director.
What?
Oh, Hal, you just have to rub it in, don't you?
Super senior director.
He's the most senior director in my book.
I'm working on it. On it. Apparently, I'm not bribing the right people.
Well,
you're just not senior.
I'm on the podcast, so it's probably going to happen any day now.
There we go.
Jeff, you're just not senior director material.
Anyway.
Did you want him to introduce himself, or were you going to introduce him first?
Well, I gave kind of a high level. Anything else that we should say? I think so. It's not so egotistical for Jeff to say. I'll toss in. Jeff is a very prolific speaker at confs of years past. So if you're looking for some very technical, very smart, and very fun sessions, you can search for him
everywhere.
Actually, go to conf.splunk.com, conf online, search for Champagne, actually, and that would work.
Yes.
So, but I did want to hear the origin story. I feel like you and me, we're talking to each other, and we're just ignoring the guy down there.
Or my Splunk origin story.
Actually, start with your parents' birth and work up from there. It was a Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a little background on IT. So I've been working in tech since I was 12 years old. I used to design websites for local dentists because my mom she was the executive director for this dental association where I grew up in Nevada. And so, I was sitting at home learning the computer and collecting an animated GIF library to put to good use. And so I used to do that. And then that evolved into getting a job at a sort of small integrator company. And I learned how to build servers and crawl under buildings and punch down network cable and all sorts of fun stuff. And then I sort of where I think I learned the most is I worked for this
dumb question.
Yeah.
What is punch down network cable? Is that when you
Birch?
Burch.
No, different thing. So there are crimps if you're making network cables, you know, when you put an
if you're
RJ,
about to tell me that there's crimps and there's jimps, then it's a Dr. Seuss book.
no,
No.
you know, if you're making network cables, those little connectors on the end are called RJ45s, and you crimp them on with a crimper like that. That Hal's showing you. And
I
then
make my own
typically,
cable. Yes.
yeah, but in a office environment, or even, you know, if you're like me in your house, there's a terminal block where all the cables come into, like a closet, and when you terminate the wires onto that block, you literally punch them down. There's a tool called an impact tool, and you stick it in, and it shoves the wire in, so it makes a connection with the copper and then cuts it off when you do it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That part I haven't done.
Well,
Don't.
next time you come to Brooklyn,
yeah, we'll punch some cable.
What we're doing. Yeah.
I need free drops from my wiring closet up to different rooms in the house.
Sounds like you're making a trip to Atlanta, Burch.
All right.
Yeah. I want to, this is like geek thug life. Yo, I'm about to drop some cable and punch it.
Yeah.
Punch it down.
So then I got a job in high school working. So my one of my teachers, her husband owned this real estate company, and they had like 20 offices across the country. They're kind of small. They needed somebody to come in and like be their IT person. So I started there and worked there for 6.5 years, and went from being like the only IT guy to running their sort of IT group, which, you know, when I left, there were like 5 of us. It wasn't huge, but I learned a lot because we went from 20 offices to having 600 and something by the time I left.
Oh, dang.
And so I I was responsible for buying servers and learning how to install a SAN and create redundant databases. And like, you know, they didn't know what needed to happen, and neither did I, but they had money to spend and I was willing to learn. And so that's how I learned a lot of what I know how to do in tech.
Did you go to school for tech stuff?
I went to school for business. I have a degree in business information systems. So a little bit of tech, but it was more business focused. I'd say I learned most of the tech stuff on my job. Yeah. But what was great about that job is when I moved to New York like a week after graduating from college with, you know, as they say, a hope and a prayer, no job, 2 suitcases. And I had 2 friends that lived here, and they let me sleep on their couch for a month, which was great. And I ended up getting a job at an integrator here.
Is this like the plot of Pretty Woman or something?
Yeah. Doing integration stuff for law firms and hedge funds. I eventually worked for a big bank doing architecture design for trading systems. And at that bank, we used Splunk. And so I remember one day, like, we had been trying to solve this particular problem for like months using I don't want to speak ill of any of our competitors, but using another
Microsoft
monitoring
Excel.
yeah, using another monitoring tool. And it was really hard because that tool is very difficult to extend the schema and like deal with everything. And so somebody mentioned, like, I've heard about this company called Splunk, like maybe we should try it. And so I literally downloaded the software, and in an hour had it deployed to like 45 of our domain controllers, pulling in logs, and like solved this particular problem we were having. And it was like magic. I loved it. It was amazing. And from then on, like any kind of problem we had, I was always like, let's try solving it with Splunk. And like to the point where my coworkers were like, you have drank the Splunk Kool-Aid. Like, shut up, Jeff. We don't want to hear from you anymore. And I guess the reality is that I did drink the Splunk Kool-Aid because later on, my sales engineer came to me and said, hey, have you ever thought about working at Splunk? And I was like, working in sales, ew, why would I want to do that? And he was like, this was Dimitri. He was like, don't think about it working in sales. Think about it like working with customers to solve problems with a product you love. And that is the way I think about it still to this day. So that's the origin story.
It's nifty because that mental way, like we talked about this in our last episode, we had people on talking about like the SE program and their former interns, and it's just consistent both in Splunk as well as people that come on the podcast. They say when you're a sales engineer, you don't even realize that you're in sales. You just feel like you're helping
Yeah.
like customers solve problems, and you're like you get to like craft the solution, and then you might help a little more, but like they get to do the work and you get to enjoy the success too. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, it's so rewarding. So
Yes.
once you became a sales engineer here, you applied, you got hired, obviously you went through a million interviews, you came to
Million.
Splunk. What about your time at Splunk? Have you worn many hats or some hats?
Many. I think I've had like 5 titles in the 6.5 years I've been here. So started as a role that we no longer have called client architect. And the job was really to be embedded with a couple customers. And my entire job was just to be there and solve problems for them. They had a sales engineer and I was sort of like more deeply embedded and technical. So I did that for a little while and then they got rid of that role. And I moved into just sort of normal sales engineering for, I think, 3 months. And then one of my all-time favorite Splunkers, V. Lee, came and said, hey, do you want to come be an architect? Because I had sort of mentioned to her and Sean at one point, like, hey, if there's ever an opportunity, I think I might be interested in this. And literally like 3 weeks later, she comes to me and is like, we have a spot, which, is sort of the story at Splunk or any high growth company. I mean, that's why I love working here, is just the opportunity. And did that. So I was a staff architect for a couple of years and eventually made it to principal architect for sort of the core platform.
Can we pause
And
there
then,
for a moment
yeah.
and say, and alluding to something mentioned earlier this week, and the one thing that you were remembered about during that time, we were speaking at Conf and the worst practices
Oh yeah.
talk that you did.
Yeah.
And it's still important. It probably needs some updates, but some of the concepts there, I think, I don't know if you remember anything off the top of your head you want to talk through, you kind of like why it's important, but just kind of hitting that this was like super big deal, that we have architects that can think through these things and then distill that knowledge out.
Yeah, that was an interesting talk. So the origin of that talk, I'll tell you, is obviously being an architect, I sort of encountered a lot of these common challenges. But there is a old school Splunker who no longer works here by the name of Gerald, and it was a bit infamous in internal chat channels of like people asking questions and him being like, why would you ever do that? That is the dumbest thing you would ever do. Well, right. And so I was like,
G-rated version of what he would say.
100%.
And hilarious because he ended up marrying like the complete opposite,
Sweetest
nicest person.
Yes.
Splunk. Yeah.
Yes. Hi to you both, if any of you listening.
Shout out to Aaron and Gerald.
But anyway, what struck me about that is people always talked about it. You know what I mean? About like things that were said. Oh yeah, Gerald always railed about this or that. And I kind of thought to myself, like, it's funny, like we have all kinds of best practices guides, but like everybody like remembers the horror shows, right? And so it's that best practices talk flipped on its head, because best practices are geared at common issues. Well, so are the worst practices. And it just happened to do it in like, what are the most common awful things that we encounter? And it was fun, kind of lighthearted way to approach the topic.
Do you have any memories of a particular horror story with a customer that
I
were able to?
I was just saying the same thing. Tell us about a car wreck of a.
I don't know if I do, honestly. It's been so long. I'd have to go look back to the deck. I it hasn't been that long, but like I haven't done that stuff for like 2.5 years now, and there is just so many things, because now I'm in product helping with what our day-to-day strategy is, and there's just so many things going on. I can barely keep it all in my head.
I can appreciate that.
Common ones, there was always stuff around the intricacies in how people decided to try to set up a highly available Splunk deployment. And I would say, actually, I can think of one. there was somebody who created this extremely elaborate way to have lossless syslog. Like that, they had like these RabbitMQ servers going, and they had this like really advanced deduplication happening and everything. And the challenge was, I was like, you spent all of these hours and time developing this system. There's all of these different components that are running. And at the end of the day, like the protocol does not guarantee
It's still
delivery.
UDP.
So like, why go through all of this effort to engineer these like
a TCP route,
this
mousetrap
for I know it was like the most crazy like Rube Goldberg machine to like get syslog in, and even then you couldn't guarantee that it was gonna be successful. That was one of my favorites. I think a common theme in that talk that I gave was like, simplify, just keep it simple. You know, like you're going to run into more problems than it's worth if you try to make these really complex solutions.
I feel like that's a common engineering thing, is like sometimes the temptation of solving a technical challenge and like being able to like create like there's an art and a finesse with the science, and you end up creating this incredibly beautiful thing, but you overlook how fragile it is. And like you said, like a Rube Goldberg,
someone needed it.
Yeah, if it was worth the investment, like we lose track of that as engineers, and next thing you know, it's like, hey, this is really great, but if anyone coughs near the server, like everything falls apart like a house of cards.
So that sounds like an interesting play of pros and cons and limited resources and things that people in product management probably have to get into.
Speaking of which,
every day.
So after you were,
So after I was a principal architect, I ran this other program in the sales engineering org for a couple of years called Pony Express, which was super fun. Loved that program. And the whole point of it was we would travel the world, and I would work with local account teams to identify customers that were sort of at the cutting edge of what we were doing. And I would do a lot of prep. Me and my best bud, Juliet Wu, who, shout out to Juliet, love her, would do a ton of prep with the account teams to go like, what do we need to cover? Like, what are the challenges the customers were going? And we would build like bespoke agendas and tiger teams to go in and like have the whole point was the questions that the customer should want to ask around this, like everyone in that room should either have the answers or be one person away from it. It was a lot of fun, got to work on a lot of really interesting challenges, and had fun while we were doing it, like traveling and being Splunk.
I think there's a theme with as you build up to where you are now. I think there's a theme in all of your kind of hops in your job of this like very organic, like you've identified a gap and you started working on it, like the Pony Express. Like, didn't that start with you were like, oh, well, we should do this thing. And then it became a larger meeting. And then it was like, oh, to make it,
When I was a principal architect, I was doing some of this already. And then my VP at the time, Chris Gilbert, was like,
Shout out to Chris Gilbert.
Shout out to Chris Gilbert. Hey, Chris. So he was like, I like what we're doing here. And some of our other regions who don't have the like access to, because at that time we didn't have architects everywhere. I'd like to start sort of bringing you guys around and doing this. Do you think and so we did a trial of it in London. And it went really well. And so Chris was like, can you build a program around this? And so sometimes we would bring resources like from other geos, but I also tried to really identify local folks that we could bring to the table in the right discussions. Because, I don't want to get into too much complexity on how like sales organizations are structured, but like going sort of cross sales districts and things like that are complicated. Yeah. And so my program was like really designed to be able to cut across all that, which was great. So I did that for a couple of years. And then Tim, our CTO, And Susan, who was our chief revenue officer at the time, got together and was like, hey, as we've grown as a company and acquired different organizations and sort of fold them into the products org, there was a need to be a lot more structured about how our product teams were engaging with customers, to ensure that we were like having the right conversations at the right time. And so Tim and Susan came to me and said like, hey, we think that it'd be great if you could do some of the things that you were doing out in the field directly with customers, but directly in product. And, because what the Point Express was focused on was solving customer challenges with product that exists today. That was a huge thing of ours, was like, sometimes we would talk a little bit about roadmap, but mostly like, what can we do with the product that exists today?
Well,
and yeah, go ahead.
There's, I remember, like at the time, you had started to figure out a new approach on how to collect feedback and enhancement requests from these conversations. And I feel like that undercurrent is very, very material to your story of how you.
That's a good point. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah. So yeah, at that time we were also, had started to sort of collect like, what are the top issues we're seeing and needs from these customers, and developing business cases for them. And yeah, there was a need, we were sort of tracking all of this in Jira, like what was the stuff that people needed. That was recognized. I at one point did a presentation to Doug and the executive team about sort of what I was seeing across different areas and what we thought we needed to do. And you're right, that sort of inspired Susan and Tim to have this conversation around, let's build a program around this. So the first step was I actually started to build out what is now known as Splunk Ideas in the field. I was in sales engineering and was sort of building this. And, Tim was sort of like, that's a great thing you're doing, but like, I think it's a much better place for you to be to build programs like that and actually influence product by being in the products org. So then fast forward maybe like 4 months, and they had announced Sender Selikumar as the chief product officer, and Sender and I talked. Shout out to Sender.
Shout out.
Sender.
Yeah,
I was just name dropping all over the place.
Yeah,
anyway, so Sender and I talked for like 4 months, and
that's quite a quarter.
Really aligned. And I was like, hey, let's do this. Like, I'm super excited. I want to work together. There's Matt, we work from home. This is what happens.
This is it. Hi, Matt. You're on a live podcast.
Yeah. So I was like, I want to work together. Let's do this. And came over and started this field PM org, and launched Splunk Ideas and a bunch of other programs that have sort of, again, the whole point of my team, if I were to put it in a nutshell, is to give our product managers leverage, meaning provide programs, process, and resources for them to scale, so that when they're ready to engage with customers on something, we have advisory boards so that they can engage at the right time and at the right level with customers. We're collecting enhancement requests and helping them have data to be able to triage them and know where do we need to focus based on a variety of different data points, just so everyone knows when you're on Splunk Ideas, it's not just raw votes that is like what impacts what we're going to do. We look at lots of different data points behind the scenes. I know that's the only data point people can see on the portal, but like we look at a lot of stuff on the back end. So.
And so just to tie up a couple of things. So if you want to learn more about Splunk Ideas, check our back catalog. Is that what the cool kids call it? For our episode with Jesse, I believe it's called It's Miller Time. And we talk all about ideas on there. It's very cool.
That's a good name.
Yeah. It's not just, it is very cool that you can vote for each other's ideas, right? It's not just a blind static submission.
Yeah.
Thing. So check out that episode to learn
It was
more.
episode 9. I just looked it up.
9.
And the thing
German for no.
One of the things about that I love is, as we were going around talking to customers, the biggest challenge too was, as a customer, when you're trying to plan your technology roadmap, you have vendors who you're partnered with, and you need to sort of know what direction they're going in and what you're going to get when, so that you can decide how are you going to invest your dollars and your staff time. Do you need to go build something because your vendor doesn't have that capability, or can you complement it? And so that was the big thing we aim to do with Splunk Ideas is, yes, it's a way to ask us to do things, and we do put a lot of the things on the backlog and have delivered a bunch of features that are in Splunk Ideas. But the other side of it is just transparency, so that if we're not going to do something, we try to let people know as soon as we can. Or if it's further out on the roadmap, there are indicators for that. So it just gives a lot more transparency versus filing a support case and having that enhancement sit in a system that nobody has any visibility into.
And I think that type of system leads to engagement. It's like, okay, I can be involved somewhat in this process and feel like I'm included in it, and it's real. Like it is tied to the systems that we use to plan the roadmap.
Yeah, I have teams that look through those things. When we decide we're going to do something, we track that, like people are held accountable. So it is real. And then when we engage with advisory boards, if you're on a customer advisory board as part of our product advisory council, Splunk/PAC, if you have not been there, you can sign up for various product advisory councils, and all of that's integrated and tied together so that when we decide we're going to work on something, when we want to go get feedback, we consult with our advisory council folks.
So, and I want to pick on scale a little bit more, because when we kind of started at the company at few years of each other.
You were at my first conf, Hal, as a customer. I went to conf in 2012, and I remember going to the Microsoft booth and talking to you about the app for Exchange, I think it was, or something like that.
Yeah. I would have been manning the booth, and you were a customer.
Yeah. Way back.
Funny. I don't remember that one.
That's all right. I didn't make an impression, clearly.
And then I think Jeff and I were hired like within months of each other or something.
Yeah.
So
sorry,
when I started, there were 30 PMs or whatever. It was a pretty small number of people. And you know what products they made? It was product one, singular, and it was called Splunk Enterprise.
Yeah.
And now we have a little more than that, and acquisitions, and
a little more.
I don't know if it makes sense to say the number of product managers, but publicly we can say there's 6,500 plus employees. Say that to the street. So
quite a bit more than 13, I'll say.
I'm sorry?
Quite a bit more than 13, I'll say.
Yes, bigger than a bread basket.
So a lot of this is related to, okay, who is the right person to work with on this one little piece of this one bigger piece of this bigger thing that's a product or a service.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people involved in these things now.
Absolutely. And, the biggest thing is like spending the last few weeks working through is, so not only do we have lots of products, but Splunk as a company is taking this platform and trying to unify all the different components, particularly, we acquired SignalFX, and we have this really kick-ass observability suite that is coming online. Like the newest version of that, I'm like super excited about.
Oh, this is a PG-13. You can't say kick-ass because kick
sorry
is inappropriate.
about that. Apologies. You can.
I thought you could say kick-ass.
No, you can. I was just joking that kick was the offensive word. It was not necessary.
Just making sure that, because we don't actually have the ability to bleep. So
just
having
say it again. I'll bleep. I'll bleep
4 times.
Yeah.
We've got kick-ass products. Bleep. Well done. Anyway, but bringing all that together and unifying it into a common platform that has common identity services, so you don't have to use different logins across them, common administrative interfaces, so you can light up different services from a central console, common GDI pathways, shared logging, a search infrastructure, like all of these things we're working on. And the dependence.
If you were right now to ask any audience member, name one Splunk app on Splunk base, they would all say common information model. Because every time you said common, I was waiting for information model. I think
It's
that's how
just in
magic
your
works.
head.
Yeah.
You've
And how
been-
many
Power,
different
power of suggestion.
Sims are there, Jeff?
I don't
Oh
even get
my
me
God.
started
There's
there.
more. Yeah.
Is it Sim or Kim? Anyway, so the challenge there is dependency management, right? Because at Splunk, we have offering teams of PMs who own the actual product that a customer sees and touches. We have platform PMs who own the backend services like search and indexing and identity, commerce, like all these kinds of things. And when you're going to bring a new product to market or service or capability, you have to have there's all of these downstream dependencies that need to be mapped and managed and deadlines aligned. And it's complicated. It's really complicated. Heck of a lot easier when we had one product with Splunk Enterprise, right? But now, you're tying together massive sort of suites of capabilities. And it's exciting. It's cool, but there's a lot of things to manage, and different set of problems than we had, 10 years ago.
So, I mean, if you're doing pretty good at that job, at that mission, what does success look like?
Success looks like meeting deadlines for products being delivered on our roadmap on time. When those products are delivered, they have very clear outcomes. So when I think about that, like let's say we deliver a new product, it could have a set of capabilities, right? I can search these logs, I can do this thing. But what we really need to get into is what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve for a customer and what value do those outcomes provide? So having those really clearly defined are important, because especially when you're working with cross-functional teams and have downstream dependencies, because I have to know as an offering PM, yes, I need this particular capability. I have to be able to collect data from this system, do something to it, send it to this other place. But I also have to know why, because there may be a bunch of caveats around how that data is collected, what authentication protocols I need to support, what data formats need to be supported, the time, the latency of how quickly an event needs to traverse a pipeline to get into like there's lots of things that come into play where if we just deliver a set of capabilities out to the market, you end up getting a lot of churn in how the sales team goes out and talks to customers about it. And then the customers want to implement things. They kind of get bogged down and like, yeah, I can kind of use this, but it doesn't do exactly what I need. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Al.
I was just saying, why does this new feature exist? I mean, I see it, the bullet point, but why is it important, and will it actually, how will it help?
Yeah. So I don't remember how we got on this topic, but the point was that's the sort of new problems, right? As you grow and get it. That was what it was, is we, growing from when I started, I think we were at like 900 and something employees, and now at 6,400 or whatever it is now. It's a different scale of challenge,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So if you were to kind of look, I think scale is kind of the point, right? I mean, that's where the phase of the company, right? And we've always been a high growth company, like scale is important. Are there things that you foresee being a challenge ahead of you that you haven't even gotten to yet?
Scale is in the organization. I think that there's always challenges, right? So the stuff I would say now we're working on is probably some of the biggest challenges, this transformation of our business from an on-prem software company to a cloud-based company. Unifying the platform is just such a like multi cross-functional, like matrixed environment kind of thing that you have to bring all these people together.
Boring, and you just Dilbert it all over me.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's just like all of it. I know. Like, then the other challenge is, shifting development teams, because our on-prem product was, you get 2 releases a year is what we were typically doing. In cloud, we're on 4-week release cycles. So changing the cadence that people are,
insane.
used to delivering features is a huge thing because it has implications in how we scope, right? When we're delivering every 4 weeks, we can't deliver these massive dumps of features and capabilities. We have to design very scoped outcomes that we're looking to deliver, right? And it may just be a couple capabilities that enable that outcome, and we deliver them rapidly, but we iterate very quickly. Then there's all sorts of go-to-market things about that, right? Like, how do I line up education and marketing materials and demos and all this stuff behind what we're delivering? So I'd say those are sort of the biggest things we're facing now that's sort of top of mind. As companies grow, those are some of the challenges as you expand into new product areas, make acquisitions. Splunk is sort of in the thick of that right now. Once we have this settled, so the next piece is like looking at what additional markets you want to go after and problems you want to solve, right? Like, and Splunk has always been doing a bit of that. We have an entire industries and verticals team that helps with specific solutions in different markets. But one of the things that we're doing right now is our core sort of competency and focus is around security, IT operations, which has always been a bread and butter of our, like that was I started using Splunk for originally. And then we're moving into, or expanding, I guess, into this DevOps, SRE sort of cloud monitoring environment. Yeah. APM, those capabilities are all new to us.
So on a complete change of topic,
okay.
Not a complete one, but any loyal listener at this point may notice something, which is that a lot of what Jeff is talking about sounds a lot like the way I described my job. And that's because,
in fact, I used to call you Little Jeff.
Yeah,
oh, nice.
LJ for short. Up until last Monday, I was working for Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know what I did wrong.
Yeah, you seem to have driven him away.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to think about that.
And we can get into my new role more.
We can get into the negatives about your work output and
the
why
360
Jeff pushed you away.
We'll set that
let's do our
let's do a
360 degree review right now on air.
Is this a roast? I didn't realize that was this was going to be.
Yeah,
roast/exit interview, right?
We actually have a bunch of people in the waiting room to be the dais here to roast you. So I switched roles last week, and I am now the PM for developer experience. So I'll talk more about that in a future podcast. But essentially, I am on a mission to bring the app development or solution development world to be as pleasant and seamless and simple and effective as possible for all the developers out there.
So
given you send Burch on a mission, he's not going to stop. So
which also makes me think day to day of the Lorax. I speak for the developers, which brings us back to Hal, who in a prior life
I was one of the, I think there were only 3 of us with the title of developer evangelist. It was me, Damien, and Terry at the time. And yeah, that was the job. That was what I pitched myself as, was the Lorax. I speak for the developer, and it was to be a representative of this persona that was actually not a customer. And it was hard at the time to justify doing anything for somebody that is not paying any money to the company that sells the software. So it was a bit of a challenge. But if you have a platform, then you have an ecosystem. And it's kind of up to us to decide what to do with that ecosystem. Either you do things to please the developer, or you do not have a continuing ecosystem.
So I used to work for Jeff. Now I'm in a role that is very, very similar to what Hal did many years ago. And I think when Hal was in that role very many years ago is when Jeff may have approached him at the Microsoft booth.
I believe so. It's just come full circle.
Full circle.
So, but I wanted to pitch a question to Jeff related to kind of your new role, Burch, which is one.
What are Burch's flaws?
Yeah, what are Birch's flaws? And two, given the complexity that you just talked about and the size of the organization and the acquisitions and multiple products, that's what Birch is doing there that's going to be tough because it's a new layer on top of, because the capabilities that you talked about delivering might be, customer needs to do this and here's how it'll happen. And there's going to be probably a mock-up of a user interface, right? That is nothing like what Birch's mission is. How do you kind of, it's a different persona. How do you kind of work through that with the teams?
I mean, I have lots of opinions on what Birch's new job should be, but I will let him speak to what he's doing. But when I think about the challenges that we're confronted with in a developer ecosystem, particularly as we move to this platform and are starting to bring together and unify various products and services we've created, I can think about just technical add-ons as one example. There are so many ways now that you can bring data into Splunk. You can use OTel to bring data into our observability offering. You can use modular inputs. You can use data collectors. We have cloud collectors. And Splunk as a company recognizes that these things can be very frustrating. Some people like the options, right? That's one of the things you always get. It's tricky when you start to prescribe a path, because you don't want to be too rigid. Because especially for developers, people love that there's lots of different ways for them to sort of bend the platform to their will. But on the other side, we have customers who are like, just tell me the best way to do this. I don't care about the 5 other options. Like, I just need to know. So we need to take a look at what that looks like, as well as just having a common design framework for how these things operate across all of our different offerings in the immediate term, as some of those things are unifying, I would say, sort of within areas. So example is our observability offering. We bought SignalFX and a company called Omnition. Those products together became our APM and our infrastructure monitoring solution. Then we bought a bunch of other companies and we've added in, Splunk brought the secret sauce of logs. So we have infrastructure, application monitoring, and logs and sort of this observability suite, but we're adding in synthetics and real user monitoring, a bunch of other stuff, right? I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Developers is where we start.
Yes. So having a common, so that's all coalescing in that area, right? So the product is coming together as a unified suite, and that's happening in security. We're sort of concentrating everything on our mission control interface and having a common work surface for people to work within those areas. And then once we unify those parts, it's how do we unify Splunk as a solution so that you can come and use those things. So there are some near-term tactical things we need to do to provide standardization on how we define add-ons and apps and content that customers can bring to the table. And then there's more strategic things looking at, great, once we start to unify GDI pathways, for example, across all these offerings,
GDI is getting
what does that look like? Sorry, yeah, getting data in. What does that look like so that, you shouldn't have to think about it as a customer when you want to bring data in, that I have to load this TA into my enterprise deployment and I have to load this pipeline into stream processing service. And I got to do all these other, you should just have one package that you can load and Splunk knows what to do with all the rest of the things. So, I'm going to leave that to Burch, though, to go figure out. It's not all on him. We have lots of teams that are working through this stuff. But from a developer standpoint, there's challenges that we need to go confront and make easier.
Jeff, we talked at a high level about the outcomes your team delivers. What about what can you say about specifically what functions report into you? Can you share some of that and make it a little more?
Sure.
Yeah,
but don't talk about Jesse because we already talked about Jesse.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's Jesse.
Shout out to Jesse.
We already talked about Jesse. Hey Jesse, shout out to Jesse. With Splunk Ideas. I also have a program run by Dimitri Lavin who does our compliance. So what that
ask him
looks
for
like
compliance jokes.
As he is good with the
He is
compliance
actually,
jokes.
yeah.
I actually said
Just
to him today, I
today.
was like, I said, are you thinking about leaving the team to just write jokes? Because you've been on a roll lately. And then he was like, did you really like my jokes? I'm like, yeah, they were great. So anyway, it's hard to have a good compliance joke, but
It is hard.
so Dimitri's job is when we decide we're going to bring a particular product into a particular market, those markets have different compliance requirements. And so he works with our product managers to say, great, you want to target selling this particular product to, US defense or something, or to
GDPR.
yeah,
I was thinking
whatever. We need to comply with
GDPR is
GDPR, right?
probably the
You want to
most
sell,
relatable.
if you want to sell this in Europe, we have GDPR, different requirements we need to comply with. Here are the controls that we have to implement in either software on how the product operates or in our operations team on how they're going to manage the offering. And he helps them sort of map all that out so that when we deliver the product, it has those controls built in. Because the other way to do it is you develop a product, you go do an audit. The audit has all these findings that you're missing these controls. Then you go back to the drawing table. Then you go back and you implement all those things. And it's
Proactive versus reactive.
totally. So that's
Yeah.
Dimitri's job is helping us align those in our roadmap and strategy. There is Marvin Green on my team who runs our roadmaps program.
Shout out to Marvin.
Shout out to Marvin. Marvin is in charge of the customer.
I think he wins for most handsome Splunker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And he's got some good jokes. He's
he's
from
great.
Jamaica. Yeah, Marvin grew up in Jamaica. He's great. He definitely brings the jokes when he's doing his presentations. I was like, you're trying to take the mantle from Burch with regard to corny jokes when you're giving these presentations, man. So you better watch out, Burch.
I'm thinking we need a gag reel, and it's going to be just stupid jokes we pulled from various, presentations. All right.
So Marvin's in charge of, I wouldn't just say customer facing, he is in charge of the external facing roadmap to anyone sort of outside of our products organization. So he works with our product managers. He doesn't decide what goes on the roadmap. He's in charge of taking all of these bits and pieces that different product managers are working on and bringing them together with our product line owners and our product marketing folks so that there's a unified story that when we're talking about new products we're bringing to market, we're ensuring that we're highlighting not just capabilities, the what we're delivering, but the why. What is this going to do for you? What value is it going to bring? He also does there's a lot of stuff on his plate around sort of just tracking dates and making sure we're delivering on time. Now that Burch has left us, Marvin has also taken on some of the things Burch was doing around executive alignment. So we work with all of our different leaders in our different theaters, right? So in Europe or in Australia or whatever. And we talk to them about what are the most critical things that you need the products organization to deliver in your region this year. And we track those. We make sure that they're resourced in our products and in our PM and engineering org. We make sure we're making progress towards these. We have relevant dates that are outlined so that we're communicating that and staying on top of it. And then I have Melissa Gans, who is fantastic, runs our advisory.
I've been waiting for this.
Shout out to Mel. Melissa runs our advisory program. So sort of put that in two buckets, or customer facing, customers know this is our product advisory council, but there's sort of two buckets I think about advisory programs. There's early programs where we're doing customer advisory boards, where we'll bring sort of early ideation to a customer and talk about, hey, here are the things we're thinking about building, here are the outcomes we're thinking about achieving. Does this make sense? Is this going to be valuable to you? And then she's got other folks on her team who can take the product once we've done that early ideation, once we have code to actually start testing. She has folks, amazing technical folks that she can tell you about that are hands on keyboard and can help our customers implement that software in an alpha or a beta, do all kinds of testing, get feedback into the organization, iterate, so that when we
all
It
those
just hit me
alphas.
that there's going to be some really good stories there. So we're definitely going to get her on the
Love to get
show
her.
and
You should
with
definitely.
the engineers to talk through that.
All the alphas and betas. Like if you're involved in one, you're going through her, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah. So those are the sort of key areas that that my team focuses on.
And Jesse. Shout out to Jesse again.
I already talked about Jesse first.
Yeah.
You,
He already
you got
gets-
this love affair with Jesse.
Yeah.
Does he know
well,
this?
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
Jesse is credited with he's got wonderful musical taste.
Oh, he's like an accomplished pianist. Yeah.
I didn't actually know that part.
You know, Jesse just celebrated 10 years at Splunk on Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's sweet.
No, that's love.
Yeah, he's an old school Splunker.
We're coming up on time, but I want to attempt something I didn't discuss with Hal in advance, and I just thought of, which is a
Or me.
Oreo. It's a rapid fire of Splunk questions for you.
Are we gonna do
gosh.
an SPL quiz? Because like
That's part of it.
I could go for
Oh
it.
no,
Okay.
You didn't
Okay.
study. Okay.
I didn't. I used to
ladies
be
and
really good
gentlemen,
at this.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to America's favorite game show, Rapid Fire Splunking. Our
Should be
first guest
lightning.
here is pew pew. So Jeff, I'm gonna just ask you some rapid fire questions.
Yep.
And just say the first things that come to your head. So favorite
Okay.
SPL command, Jeff.
Stats.
Wow. What about your first conf?
2012.
Favorite conf?
First time we went to Disney. What was that? 2015?
Yeah, 15 maybe?
Yeah.
Because I think 16 was DC.
Yeah. That was my
Something like
favorite.
that.
Number of Splunk shirts.
Oh, too many. At least
Distinct count of
20
number
or
of Splunk
30,
shirts.
20 or 30. You know, Matt, my partner, was like, you got to get rid of some of these. Like, hey, shirts are one thing, sweatshirts are another. And I'm like, I can't.
Well, that's
get rid of
my
those. Those are
next and last
collector's
question.
items.
How
Yeah.
number of Splunk hoodies?
Everyone since 2012. I don't know. I can't do
Yeah.
math.
Estimated distinct count. Okay.
Yeah.
We've got
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That has been Rapid Fire Questions with Jeff Champagne.
Oh, that was easy. All
Yeah,
right.
that was easy.
we need to come up with more of those, and then like I want to do them, and you and I. Can
I
go
was
back and
worried if there
forth.
was going to be some gotchas in there.
I think we need to
No,
record
gotcha.
an episode where you and I do that, Birch.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's
Wait, hold
step
on.
into
Wait,
some of
wait.
those.
I can give him some gotchas though.
What
Oh,
you want to give some gotchas? Well,
Yeah.
why don't you think? Do you want to think of a gotcha while I unpack some of the answers he gave?
Why do you assume that I don't have a gotcha?
Got it on
I was
deck.
I'm trying to support you.
Okay, well, no, I mean, I appreciate that. So, if I want to know how many fields are in an event, how would I do that?
How many fields are in an event?
What SPL command will tell me the answer to the question of how many fields are in an event?
Oh, I don't know.
How? Wait. It would give you would it give you a summary of the fields?
I was like, I'd have to go look at my cheat sheet.
I would use field summary. Yeah, that's what I
Field
would do.
summary. Yeah.
There we go.
All right.
Oh, I feel like I failed.
Nerds.
I think I still have my laminated Splunk SPL cheat sheet around somewhere.
The 3-pane, yeah,
Oh, it was the best.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was good stuff.
Birch
It's
is
still
looking
good
for
stuff.
his right now. Birch, you're doing a podcast right now.
Or Orlando
Oh,
surprised
sorry.
me. Not a lot of people not me. Like I actually love the Orlando show as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was a universal thing. A lot of people were like, eh.
I think people, I don't know. So I grew up in Nevada, not in Vegas, but gaming and all of that doesn't really have the allure. And I also just find I'm exhausted in the trips in Vegas.
Yep.
Not that Disney, we weren't having fun at night and stuff, but like it was a different speed and I enjoyed that. But
Yeah.
So I forgot that it literally was behind me on top of the table. I'm holding up our quick reference. It's available as a PDF online. I am aggressively passionate about the value of this thing. When I started with Splunk, just stick with this, and then you start to ask questions that go beyond this, and that's when you graduate into the docs and into the
That's right.
other material.
That is the best. That and Regex 101 are like your best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have a problem now, guys. We
We're
have
out of time.
one product.
We have
We
more
only
than
have
one product.
one
That's right.
quick
We do.
reference guide.
That's true.
What's
Well,
that
it
about?
sounds like you should get to work on that.
I think that that's a thing for
Yeah.
Burch to do.
Yeah, guys, someone should get to work on that.
I was
So
also going to say how can you hate renting out a theme park for the Splunk party?
Mm.
Like
Loved
that
it.
is like the
I thought
best.
it was pretty awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
well, Jeff, thank you for coming on.
Oh,
This is
thanks for
great.
having me.
For anyone concerned, we had booked Jeff well in advance of when I dumped him for another job. So
And I still showed up.
and he still showed up.
Wow.
Oh, Birch, I'm happy.
But don't
for
y'all
you.
actually live
Thank
like
you.
10 or 20 miles away from each other or something?
Yeah, like we have to figure out when we're having dinner again.
We
I owe him some
do, you know,
dates.
that's the challenge
Yeah.
with New York though, is even though it's like 10 miles away, it's really like 3 hours
Yeah.
if you want to take any kind of public transportation.
I mean, that's what he keeps saying every time I ask him to come over for dinner. He's like, I don't know, man. It's like 3 hours to get there.
So,
Like,
like,
oh, okay, I got
hold
it.
on,
I
hold on.
understand.
We only have a couple minutes left, but like, okay, I'm in Atlanta, in Metro. I'm not as far out of Metro Atlanta as you can be and still be in Metro Atlanta, but it's very big. It's wide. It is one of the larger, footprints of a metro
Yeah.
area, and everybody has cars. Public transport it just doesn't work out. It didn't work out. It's not built in. Whatever the reasons are, and everything is either 20 minutes away or an hour away, and you're always taking a car.
Mm.
It's a lot different in New York. Like the
Totally.
math and the methods are totally different.
Yeah,
I think
for
the
me to
biggest
get to
challenge where
Jeff-
where Birch and I live is like, so I live in Brooklyn, so I have to like take a train into Manhattan or the subway, which isn't that big of a deal, and then transfer to a commuter rail line, take that upstate, and then like Uber.
Can
to
you even
wherever
take
he lives.
one subway, or do you have
No.
to connect on the subway?
Two?
Oh,
There's
wow.
two
Yeah.
subways.
So two subways in, and like when I've taken the subway back to and from Jeff's, that's like an hour and a half just to get
Yeah.
to Grand Central Station.
What are you
wait for the
talking
train.
about? I don't live.
Maybe
in,
it was like, yeah, you're in the
it's
boondocks.
like from my apartment to Grand Central is like 12 minutes on the subway.
I don't know. You lived in like an
Matt says
abandoned
I'm full of
church
shit.
and
Maybe
stuff. Yeah.
maybe 20 minutes. It's not that
Yeah.
far.
Someone's gonna fact check us with like Google Maps. But anyway, yeah, and then like the commuter
Well, why don't you
rail
just
and then
call an Uber?
parking and yeah.
Why don't you just call an Uber? Did I
I
just say something
mean,
bad?
What am I like? Queen
money
of
bags
England?
over
Hal? I don't have this kind of money.
When I've had to like take an Uber to like get to the airport for like business travel, I mean we're talking
yeah.
well over $100.
Whoa. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
I mean, so now I don't have an excuse though, because a friend and I bought a car because I don't need a car full time, and neither did he, but we bought a car in January, so now I can drive up and see Birch.
Now he has no excuse.
No excuse.
Well, look at the time. No, but we do have to wrap up. Thank you, Jeff, for coming on. Thank you for a wonderful Splunk talk, the podcast that's
Yeah.
all Splunk and no junk, except for the bit about Manhattan. Shout out to everyone listening. Did we do
Especially
shout
Jeff.
out to Susan, Tim, and Doug? I think we mentioned them as well.
Shout out to them
Sender.
all. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sender. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thanks
you,
for
everybody.
having me. Have a lovely day
Have a
or
great
evening wherever you are.